Here's what most news coverage of AI gets wrong. They focus on the flashy stuff, chatbots, image generators, companies announcing billion-dollar investments. But the real revolution isn't happening in headlines. It's happening inside the world's most complex industrial operations, running 24/7 in the background. Woodside Energy, an Australian company running massive liquefied natural gas facilities, just deployed 50 AI agents into production, not as experiments, not as pilots, but as actual operational systems managing real infrastructure right now. That's not a small thing. Most Fortune 500 companies are still in the we're thinking about AI phase. Woodside is past that entirely. They've gone full operational with AI agents handling everything from maintenance scheduling to guiding operators through startup procedures so complex they'd make your head spin. The flagship agent is called the Startup Advisor, an AI co-pilot that walks operators through the intricate dance of bringing an LNG plant online. We are talking about thousands of interdependent systems, split-second timing, and zero room for error because one mistake could cost millions and create a safety risk. That's exactly the kind of situation where human experts traditionally work alone, relying on experience and institutional knowledge. Now, they've got an AI partner feeding them real-time guidance. And here's where it gets interesting. This wasn't about replacing anyone. To understand why Woodside's move is such a big deal, you need to understand what LNG actually is and why it's so brutally difficult to manage. LNG is liquefied natural gas cooled to -160 degrees Celsius, so it shrinks to 1/600th of its original volume. That lets you ship it across oceans in specialized vessels instead of piping it endlessly over land. Here's the catch. Bringing an LNG plant online or taking it through maintenance is like conducting a symphony with 10,000 instruments, and every instrument has to hit its note at exactly the right moment or the whole thing falls apart. You've got compressors, heat exchangers, cryogenic systems, flow control valves, and backup safety systems, all interconnected in ways that would make a physicist's head hurt. Operators need to know the sequence, the pressure tolerances, the temperature windows, what to do if a subsystem trips offline unexpectedly, and they need to know it well enough to make split-second decisions while staying safe. Traditionally, this knowledge lived in the heads of experienced operators who'd spent decades learning through trial and sometimes very expensive error. One operator might take a different path through the startup than another, each trusting their own experience. So if you need to replicate that expertise across multiple plants or bring new operators up to speed, you've got a massive knowledge problem. That's where AI comes in. Startup Advisor isn't some autonomous robot taking over the control room. That's the crucial misunderstanding. It's a co-pilot. Think of it like a highly trained co-pilot sitting next to the pilot in an airplane cockpit, offering guidance, catching missteps, and flagging anomalies in real time. When an operator begins a startup procedure, the AI is analyzing hundreds of sensor inputs: pressures, temperatures, flow rates, compressor status, valve positions, all streaming in simultaneously. The AI has been trained on years of successful startups from across Woodside's operations, so it knows what normal looks like and what deviations matter. As the operator moves through the procedure, the AI is essentially whispering, "Okay, next step should be to gradually increase inlet cooler pressure. Watch your outlet temperature. If it dips below this threshold, you need to back off." It's not making decisions for the human. It's amplifying human expertise. If something unexpected happens, say, a subsystem doesn't respond as predicted, the AI can immediately surface alternative paths or flag which systems need attention. That's enormous value in a high-stakes environment. You've got one operator who might hesitate, second-guessing themselves. Now they've got an AI partner who's reviewed thousands of scenarios and can say confidently, "This is normal, proceed." It's augmentation, not replacement. Woodside's whole philosophy is think big, prototype small, scale fast, which means testing ruthlessly before deployment and building organizational change management into the process. Let's walk through what this actually looks like in practice. An operator sits down at the control console for a planned startup. This isn't their first rodeo, but it's been 6 months since the last startup, and procedures do evolve. They log in, and the Startup Advisor agent comes online, having ingested the current plant status, the latest procedure documentation, and the specific startup sequence for today. As they begin moving through the steps, opening isolation valves, pressurizing feed lines, bringing compressors online gradually, the AI is feeding them real-time feedback. Current inlet pressure is within range. Next, establish nitrogen purge. The operator follows the guidance, but halfway through an alarm triggers. A heat exchanger outlet temperature is climbing faster than expected. Normally, this creates a moment of uncertainty. Is this normal? Do I throttle back? Call a supervisor. With the AI, the answer comes instantly with full context. Outlet temperature is elevated, but within acceptable limits for this startup phase. This often occurs when ambient temperature is high. Monitor for the next 2 minutes. If it exceeds this threshold, reduce inlet flow rate by 15%. The operator makes the adjustment with confidence, backed by data and patterns the AI has learned from hundreds of previous scenarios. The startup completes successfully. What took years to develop in one operator's head, the intuition, the pattern recognition, the decision-making under uncertainty, is now available to every operator instantly. Here's what separates Woodside's approach from the avalanche of AI announcements you hear every week. Most companies are testing AI. Woodside is operating it. 50 agents aren't running as experiments in a sandbox. They're embedded in real production systems, making decisions that affect millions of dollars and critical infrastructure. The maintenance intelligence pilots they ran showed potential to reduce maintenance hours by up to 15% over 5 years on tested assets. That's not a marketing claim, that's measured performance from deployed systems. And here's the thing, they didn't achieve this by buying the flashiest, most cutting-edge AI model and throwing it at the problem. The source material explicitly states this success depends less on cutting-edge technology and more on foundational elements, robust data infrastructure, organizational change management, and governance frameworks. In other words, they won. Woodside won by doing the unglamorous work. They built their data pipelines properly. They didn't try to shortcut the change management. They brought operators along, trained them, built trust. They established governance, so every AI decision is accountable. Compare that to companies shouting about their billion-parameter models or their latest ChatGPT integration. Most of those companies are still pilot testing. Woodside moved past that entirely by understanding that in industrial operations, the bottleneck isn't AI capability, it's infrastructure, trust, and the ability to govern deployed systems responsibly. If Woodside can genuinely reduce maintenance hours by 15% across their asset base, let's think about what that scales to. That's not just cutting costs, though it does that. That's improving reliability, because more consistent maintenance means fewer surprise failures. That's improving safety, because more eyes on procedures means more anomalies caught early. That's improving operator satisfaction. Because they're not drowning in repetitive troubleshooting, they're working alongside a system that makes their expertise more valuable, not less. And the model is replicable. Any industry with complex machinery facing the same challenge, oil and gas refineries, power generation facilities, chemical plants, semiconductor fabs, data centers, now has a proof case that says, this works at scale. Woodside didn't invent revolutionary new technology. They took existing AI techniques and applied them with discipline to real-world problems that matter. That's where the revolution actually happens, not in research papers or press releases, but in the quiet work of making systems more reliable and operators more effective. Every operator at Woodside who uses the Startup Advisor is now more valuable. The institutional knowledge they carry is being amplified across the entire operation. That's the story nobody talks about when they are chasing the next flashy model release. So how did Woodside actually pull this off? The real lesson is in their methodology. Think big, prototype small, scale fast. That's not just a tagline, it's a deliberate process that protects against the 2 major AI deployment disasters: building something that doesn't solve the actual problem, or building something that crashes because you didn't account for organizational change. Woodside started by identifying the biggest pain points: operator guidance for complex procedures, maintenance optimization, asset scheduling. Then they prototyped small. They built one agent in one domain, tested it ruthlessly with actual operators, measured the results, and gathered feedback. Only then did they scale. When they scaled, they did it with three critical pieces in place. First, trusted data infrastructure. This can't be emphasized enough. If your data is garbage, your AI is garbage. They invested in data pipelines that actually work. Second, governance. They established clear frameworks for how AI agents make decisions, what they can and can't do, how humans override them, and how everything is logged and auditable. This isn't sexy, but it's what kept the system trustworthy as they deployed it. Third, organizational change management. They didn't just hand operators an AI tool and say, figure it out. They trained them. They built in feedback loops. They iterated based on how people actually used the system. That's what scaled 50 agents successfully instead of deploying them and watching them sit unused because nobody trusted them. What Woodside just signaled is that AI in industrial operations has shifted from cutting-edge experiment to operational infrastructure. When 50 agents are running 24/7, making real decisions in production environments without anyone running screaming to shut them down, that's the moment you know the technology has matured. That's the moment it stops being news and becomes invisible, just part of how the system works. For the next 5 years, watch for this pattern to spread. Not flashy AI announcements about new models, but quiet deployments in critical infrastructure. Power plants adding AI to grid management. Refineries deploying agents to optimize energy use. Data centers using AI to predict hardware failures before they happen. This is where AI's real value lies, not in replacing creative or cognitive work that requires human judgment, but in amplifying human expertise in domains where the stakes are high, the variables are many, and the cost of failure is enormous. The revolution isn't ChatGPT. It's Woodside's 50 agents quietly making global energy operations more reliable, more efficient, and safer than they were before. That's the AI story you should be paying attention to. For daily updates on AI breakthroughs that actually matter to infrastructure and industry, follow for daily AI news.